My name is McNicholl. I am the VP of Growth Marketing here at Singular. I've been with the company for about 3 years now, and the very first product launch I ever worked on was on our Creative Analytics suite. So I'm very excited to make it full circle and be up here today to talk about creative optimization. So we figured that there was no better way to talk about creative strategy than visually. So this format of the panel is going to be a bit different than what you've seen today. Each of our panelists have prepared a few slides to talk through their stories on creative optimization. And before we kick off with those stories and those slides, I think it'd be great to do a round of introductions. So if you guys could kind of go down the line and tell us a bit about, in a nutshell, how would you describe your creative strategy?
Yeah. So hi everyone, I'm Vanessa Chang and I'm the Director of User Acquisition at Earnin. And Earnin is a financial mobile app, and what we do is we allow people to access their already earned pay without any interests or hidden fees. And so at Earnin, our strategy around creative optimization is pretty unique. We focus a lot of our efforts around optimizing with using creative generated by our community. And this is really at the core of what we believe is one of our biggest differentiators as a financial tech brand, is that we have a really strong community supporting us.
Hello. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Tierney. I work as marketing analytics at Supercell. It's a lot of questions when it comes to creative optimization strategy. We really believe in one true global creative. When we launch any new games, we really try to figure out a creative that resonates with all our communities in all regions. And it's quite challenging, as you know, Western creative sometimes doesn't translate well in the East. And we have figured out like different strategy to really combat that, making sure that our games, you know, are games that people will play forever, and our creative that people will remember forever.
Hey everyone, I'm Gavin McNicholl from Vungle Creative Labs. I'm the global head of production, so essentially responsible for production of creative units, so that's video, playable, interactive, 360, all of that good stuff. We also really try and look at innovation, so that's working with our creative product team to produce new innovative ad formats. And then also optimization, which I believe is what we're here to talk about today. It's something that our clients really demand, and we're really happy to provide, and I'm really happy to talk about. Oh, and I've been at the company for over 7 years, so it's seen the space evolve.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I think we should just go ahead and jump right in. Emily, I want to start with you. You have a very unique approach to creative optimization. So I would love if you kind of kick it off. I'm going to hand this to you, and you can just press the green button and switch over to your slides.
So for those of you who are gamers or who are active in the mobile space, we recently launched a game called Brawl Straws last year, December 15, 2018. And the interesting about this launch is that the game was in beta for almost 2 years, which is unheard of. So by the time the game was ready to launch, we have time to think about creative solution strategy, especially for performance marketing and for a global brand awareness campaign. So this is a botched version of GIF that I put together for the global cinematic. If you guys want to check it out, I highly recommend the YouTube channel. Subscribe to Brawl Stars. But we really focus on making that one global cinematic, and the cinematic is called No Time to Explain. It's a 60 seconds long animation that is fully animated 3D. And for those of you who play these games, like, we really want to introduce characters and this new IP to our audience. The game wasn't using any of the Clash IP that people are very familiar with. We use a brand new IP, so the brand awareness, optimizing for a brand was something that's very important to us. The production time was more than 9 months, and pretty much took all the soul and heart of our team to really get this creative to market. And when Singular team reached out to us about what is your optimization strategy, and I thought really hard. And one thing I can really say that is we really invest in world-class animations. It's not so much about going through many different creative, but really finding something that speaks to our brand, really represent our brand, We have killed so many creative in the past when it doesn't meet our quality standards. We actually sacrifice creative that we don't think is good enough to just not run a UA campaign. So, with no time to explain, we're very lucky that, and this is a word that our agency used and I love it, was that no time to explain brought in lion's share of volume attributed with its low CPI and impressions. I have a very long view times on both Facebook and Google, very active engagements from our community, and this piece of creative still being used for UA after 6 months the game is launched is still one of our best performing creative. So the best creative use the best performance metrics. I know is kind of vague, but we really believe that like when the game launched, we have some performance video that we prepare for the games. We have cinematic, we have 8 performance video that we made, but when we compare that cinematic with the performance video, it not only outperformed it from upper funnels and also outperform it in the lower funnel when it comes to conversions, ROAS. It was just blowing out by proportion. So some of the performance creative we did use some like holiday specific creative, but again I enlarged the cinematic icon to just shows how it just outperformed all our other all our other performance videos. And then last but not least, this is a philosophy we use a lot in Supercell, is to become a data-informed marketing team instead of data-driven. And it's very counter, to like a lot of the things that we heard today already. But as someone coming from analytics, someone who has an engineering, data science background, it actually means optimizing for the brand, optimizing for the IP, optimizing for the company. So while there's many different ways you can, iterate through different creative solutions, when it comes to the brands, let the brand manager, let the artist really discover what is really truly speaking to the brand instead of just looking at the data. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. So I think one of the most unique things about that story is that Supercell is really focused on building the brand and leading with the brand versus individual titles. So can you talk a bit about why you decided to go with that strategy versus, I would say, the more traditional strategy, which is focusing on the individual titles and growing those brands?
Yeah, if you check out all our creative, the first second of our creative is that Supercell logo. And if you run your creative, you know that the first 5 seconds is very important. But we always insert our logo in it because it's more important to elevate our company, that people recognize Supercell as a global brand. So when we create new IPs, people immediately associate that this is going to be a high quality games with high quality animations. We can't rely on Clash IP forever. For Brawl Stars, it's a brand new IP. If people don't recognize Supercell, then it's become very hard in the future.
Right, and I think you kind of touched on the pros of why you're doing that. What are some of the cons or challenges that you've had with going that strategy and that route?
Well, you lose the first second. You really lost some of the prime view time, and on top of that, we've been trying to build a Supercell brand for quite some time now. It's tough. People still when you say, oh, Supercell, oh, what is it? Oh, we're the maker of Clash of Clans. That thing. So it's really important we keep working on it and keep making sure that people are aware of the brand.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to Vanessa. You have a very interesting approach as well, and really kind of having this user-generated and community-driven strategies. So, Emily, if you don't mind passing the torch over, we're going to hear from you for a bit.
Great. So I named the presentation Scaling Creative Strategy because I wanted to share some of the lessons that we've learned throughout the past year when we started facing spending more money and scaling across different channels and existing channels. So today I'll focus a bit about what we've learned and also some of the approaches that we took. So again, about Earnin, we allow people to access their pay that they've already earned without fees or hidden costs. As of this month, we've been top 10 iOS and Google Play financial tech app. So we've been growing really rapidly throughout the past year. And I think with that great scale comes a lot of responsibility in terms of trying to access new audiences and keep up the growth through your performance. And that's largely done by creative. So let me tell you a little bit more of our original strategy. So as you can see up here, these are actually some of our employees and some other people in our community, but our creative team was going out and grabbing employees and asking them if they wanted to be in ads. So a lot of our focus was actually iterating on winners and things that did really well. It was great because we could iterate on things that were very quickly, and we can also focus on writing the scripts ourselves. But we noticed that as we started to scale, it was not a sustainable strategy because we needed more messaging types, we needed more actors, we needed more people to really sustain this. And plus, employees don't really want to be in ads when they've seen some Facebook comments about them. So it got harder to convince in that front. So some of the challenges that we faced were obviously creative fatigue. The more we were spending money, especially in the same channels, the more we needed to keep up the rotation and to keep feeding the channels to be able to find new winners. And then also a common challenge is once you start launching across different platforms, there's more formats, there's more placements, and you really need to be thoughtful about how you want to scale across all of them with your limited resources. So our solution was coming up with a community creator program that really aligned well with our brand as Earnin as well. And the way we did this was we put out a casting call via an email campaign, and we asked our community members why they loved Earnin, what was the reason why they joined Earnin, and if they would want to participate in creating ads with us. And so after a couple iterations of that campaign, we actually got lots of submissions, like upwards of 200, 300 submissions. And we started really testing them through Facebook and other platforms. And after we tested them, we compared the performance and evaluated results against our actual previous winners. And then we really started to build out a program of community creators that help us keep sustaining this ad content creation, and we really think of them as part of our Earnin company and part of our community because they're the ones who know our company the best, know why they use it, and are able to highlight our diverse community. And so here are some screenshots of examples of Vaughn, who's one of our top community creators, and Delaney, she's actually a radio DJ at Salt Lake City who loves our product, uses our product, and speaks about it in some of our ads. So with evaluating performance, when you scale and you have a ton of volume, it gets more important to iterate quickly, and you need to evaluate your results quickly as well. So I think what Singular has really allowed us to do was it answered questions that we weren't able to answer without the platform. So using things like tagging, for example, we tagged ECC, which is the way we call our community creators, and we tagged our in-house creatives, so then we can actually compare what are the results between the two, what's performing better, and also if there's any characteristics that would help us be better at communicating with our community creators as well. So if they're different gender or different messaging or different things that they're talking about, it helps us really evaluate performance, not just on a general level. So results, we've scaled a lot more of creatives, which has really helped us find a lot more winners. So we've seen some step improvements in our funnel, as well as most of our impressions are now coming from our community-driven ads. And some lessons that we learned throughout the way too is, I think the most important is just being able to iterate quickly and find your winners, and testing everything, not just your in-house creative, but your buttons, your copy, everything that can help impact your creative along the way. And then allowing room for failure. I think when this program first started, the first couple email campaigns, it didn't work out so well, and people really weren't believing in the idea as much, but it's really allowed our in-house creative team to focus on different solutions and other riskier creative strategies because we have this community creator team that helps us with our kind of bread and butter ad.
Great, thank you. Obviously, you have a very complex creative development team and process. Can you talk a bit more about how you stay aligned with your creative development team in-house, how you make sure that alignment stays throughout the entire process of development?
Yeah, we're very aligned with our creative team. We sit next to them, so it makes it easy to share insights. And second, we actually have a weekly creative performance review where we share insights, and they're well versed in our dashboards and Singular as well, so they can check in on what's performing well, what has high CTR, CVR, and things like that. And I think what's more important is also speaking their language too. So our performance marketing team, we try to do the best as possible to evaluate trends and really give them the insights that they need to make better creatives too.
Right, right. And one of the things you didn't mention today that we previously talked about was you've actually extended these creatives onto other platforms like TV. Can you tell us a bit about your learnings from that and how you'd recommend doing that for others?
Yeah, that's something that's been really interesting is as we scaled in streaming TV and in linear TV, a lot of people were telling us, hey, you should use very branded creatives or creatives that are more for TV. And I would challenge that because I think we have seen a lot of success in using our community-generated ads across many different platforms. And I think it's not necessarily about the format or the placement. I think it's about really assessing how you want your entire message to go across all of your different channels and how people are viewing it in the channel that they're viewing their ad in. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't use a low quality portrait creative on TV. It's just how do you deliver that in a way that makes sense to the audience and it makes sense to when they're viewing the ad and your and obviously convince your creative team that it's a good idea.
Right, right, yeah.
I've got a bit of maybe a point on this. So first of all, very nice that you asked your team members before you film them. We tend to just say, hey, you're going to be in this video first. But especially what's very interesting is this idea of the visual language of mobile and web actually finding its way onto TV. So I know that when Vungle first started in this space, we'd get a lot of TV ads being requested to run on the network, and we're like, actually, you kind of need to tailor it a little bit more for the mobile space. So it's great to see it actually go back the other way, where we're actually pushing the language of mobile and web and apps actually onto TV. So I think that's super interesting.
Yeah, definitely. We'll need to adopt that in your next client meeting, right? So Gavin, let's move on to you. You have a very data-driven few slides, so I'd love to have you share those.
Okay, cool. I'll start off with a brief introduction to what Vungle Creative Labs is. So essentially, Vungle's in-house creative team focus on production, innovation, and then optimization. We actually look every week at our network, and we see that 89% of the ad spend on our network is coming from Vungle optimized creative. That doesn't mean we're making it from scratch. It means we're taking existing content, making new end cards, playables, to really optimize the ad spend of our clients. I'm going to hopefully tell you a little bit about how we do that. Okay, cool. So with optimization, the first question should be, what kind of data are you looking at? So obviously, the basics, performance, these are the metrics that we all know and love. So that's installs, conversion rate, all of that good stuff. It's very interesting when you actually start looking at down funnel metrics like ROAS, retention. I'm actually going to give you a case study of how we've optimized creative based on those more down funnel metrics. And then looking at contextual data. So this is around placement. The Fungal ad network, we have multiple placements in multiple different publishers, so we really consider that, and that informs the creative we produce. But then you also have genre, and also language, localization, and hyperlocalization, and I will talk you through a little bit of an example of that. The next thing we look at is a little bit more interesting. This is that user behavior data. This is essentially how long people are spending in an ad, and then what are they doing there? So we're looking at heat mapping, interaction points, and measuring engagement. We do this through some very interesting lab testing. I'm going to give you an example about how we've actually built a playable based on these interaction and heat mapping, which I believe actually is the next slide. Cool, so let's jump straight into it. Okay, so if playables need an introduction, these are very successful creative units, the highest performing creative on the Vungle network. It makes sense. We're a mobile ad network, so the users are essentially playing these playable ads on the device they'll ultimately install. So if you give them the opportunity to play, it's very impactful. So talking about how data builds a playable, this is an example of how we used heat mapping and interaction points to really test the performance of a playable and then go on to future build new playables that met this criteria essentially. So we ran this over 30 days, collecting 3 million impressions. So let's have a little bit of a breakdown of how that looked. This has been broken down into the various scenes. So first of all, scene 1, the introduction. It's important to notice here that we're getting a lot of heat mapping there on the CTA. So this would be running after a video. So very often, users will watch a video and they're ready to install. So it's important to maybe always give them that option. It's also, you'll notice that straight in the middle of the screen, a lot of users are interacting straight away. Always give the user something to interact with. They're engaged. They want to get involved. And then what are they doing when they're involved? It's important to see, kind of veering a little bit to the right. Obviously, a right hand is a bit more prevalent. So when users are interacting with a playable, it tends to go that way. But really notice how the clicking on the CTA and also the exit out has really diminished. When users are actually starting to engage, they stay in the experience, which is really interesting to see. So always give them a lot to engage with. And then with this playable, once you've cleared the match-free elements, you've got the opportunity to just whack this piñata. And you can see, obviously, that is the main focus there, low on the CTA there, and low on the close button. And then once the ad unit has essentially finished, you see, obviously, people now ready to click on that CTA, but also tapping all around the screen. This has really told us that we really need to just add in lots of interaction points and also feedback, so that could be sound, even elements of the playable unit that aren't actionable. Give the user something once they interact with it in terms of feedback. Cool. As I talked about, we are very interested in ROAS and quality by creative. So this case study is for a Korean RPG hardcore style title. Obviously for these titles, quality of user and keeping those users in is super important. So we produced playable units where the user was able to interact with the characters, understand stats, and we actually saw like a five times increase in day 7 ROAS on this type of unit on multiple advertisers. So really exciting to see how you can kind of change your creative to look at those down funnel metrics. Localization. We also believe in the idea of a global creative, but there are differences. And to explain this, I'm actually going to use an example Noka, who's actually from our Tokyo creative team, utilizes to explain the importance of localization. Obviously, optimization, testing, you are being a bit of a detective, so why not look at the most famous detective, Sherlock Holmes. So how does he look in my home country of the UK? Benedict Cumberbatch. Looks pretty suave, like a little bit pasty. Yeah, like that makes sense for the UK market. In America, a little bit edgy. This guy's got some hair gel going on. It's got to be Robert Downey Jr. But in Japan, what does Sherlock Holmes look like? It's a little bit different. When you're approaching your localization, you want to make it as effective and cost-effective as possible. Focusing on CTAs and messaging will really make the user feel like the ad has been tailored for them and give them the sense of security, especially in the performance space when you're trying to get a user to download. Adding that in makes a lot of sense. You can actually take this a little bit further and do like hyper-localization based on seasonal events. So Chinese New Year is a very significant revenue period for us. So we've looked to scale out specific kinds of end cards that incorporate cultural elements. So for Chinese New Year down here, you see you have the red envelope. Obviously, the connotations around that around Chinese New Year, good things are coming your way. So it was no surprise that the click-through rate went through the roof there. This is really important because this is actually more of a scalable unit. Whenever we approach testing, it's like, what is bespoke, like the Toon Blast example, and what can you actually scale and turn into ad formats that can run across the network? Yeah,
Great, thank you. So obviously testing is incredibly important. How do you kind of advise your clients to start testing? Where do you start? What's the cadence?
Surprisingly, our clients, they want to do testing. It's actually become expected in the space now. Creative is a resource and it's an expense, right? You want to get it right, and testing is the only way that you can understand that. When it comes to cadence on our network, we're also really looking for that evergreen creative, right? The creative that is super impactful. Maybe it's the USB and you want to drive that out. But at the same time, we really want to focus on giving opportunity for new creative to be explored. So with our data science algorithm, it always allocates a certain amount of impressions to new creative to hopefully find that next evergreen creative. Ad fatigue is real. We have new publishers, new users coming on the network, so it's always important to increase that cadence, giving the opportunity for new creative to rise to the top. So we kind of base it on how many impressions you have to work with, what is your audience, and what are you really looking to test?
Right, so you just beat me to my next question, which was around creative fatigue. Vanessa, you mentioned it's real. Gavin, you think it's real. Emily, what are your thoughts?
Kind of real. I mean, we're very lucky that we do have some evergreen creative that we can run for a long time, but they do decay over time. So it's not like we can run it for 6 years. Maybe we can run it for 6 months and we have to like insert new creative. And finding that sweet time to like insert a new creative, you know, given that our production time is so long, we have to really predict that ahead of time. So it becomes very challenging.
Right. We definitely think it's real. Gotti actually wrote a really interesting blog post. You can find it on the Singular blog, published last week, all around creative fatigue, filled with a lot of data that we've seen our customers have. So we have a couple minutes left. I want to make sure we leave room for questions. Does anyone have any? Okay, we have one up here. 1 second. We're just going to grab the mic. Malia, right over there. Let's grab the mic one. That way everyone can hear you. All right, she made your way.
Hi, all of the playable spots that you outlined are all games. For those that are not in the game space, do you feel like playable ads is an area with which we can also get into, or is it really something that's best for games? And have you seen any success there?
Yes. 100% you can get into that space. This may be a bit more specific to the Vungle network. We skew on our publisher side, very game heavy. We actually started introducing like playable and interactive experiences to some of our brand clients. An example would be TikTok, obviously is not traditionally gaming. We actually produced this playable unit where you kind of gamified it. So you know on TikTok, it's like people upload very cute videos of their pets doing delightful things, right? So we're like, how do we gamify this? Let's make it into kind of like a tapping game where you tap, 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 and like love hearts are popping up in the emoji style, and then you unlock an even cuter video, and then an even cuter video. It became our highest performing creative for TikTok on our network. So you can definitely gamify, take elements of the brand and have fun with it, I would say. So yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer. I feel like that's very applicable to you. Anybody else? Time for one more. There we go.
Yeah, I've noticed a trend, I guess particularly in gaming, of creatives that misrepresent the game, like really extreme out there concepts that are not the actual game that you're about to download. And they're working, obviously, because the companies keep running them. So I'm just kind of curious to get your thoughts on that direction in creative.
I have many opinions on that. That's actually one of the reasons why we started looking at like those more down funnel metrics, because very often like algorithms, they're looking for like conversion, right? So let's say you have a game which is maybe like a slightly stale like RPG, like a lot of menus, a little bit boring. But if you run a trailer that makes it look like the next big AAA title on a PlayStation, like users are going to convert because they go and download. Wonderful. But the quality is kind of terrible, because once you essentially once the user starts playing, they understand that it's not actually the game. So when you actually start looking at creative by like those down funnel metrics, you maybe will start producing creatives that are a little bit boring, a little bit nerdy, but you're actually going to start attracting users who are maybe a little bit boring, a little bit nerdy, but they're going to be high quality users.
To be honest, like we have struggled with playable ads, and you can see that like Supercell doesn't run any playable ads because we haven't found any like creative that really represent our games. And the things that is when you spend so much energy and money on creating a brand, you don't want a playable that doesn't represent your game to ruin your reputation. So it's a big challenge for us, and we're still trying to test them in different platforms and really trying to figure out like a playable that can represent games like Brawl Stars. And if you play our games, like especially Brawl Stars, it requires so much like servers, time, and good Wi-Fi speed. Like how do we really get something that looks like that game? It's hard.
Great. Okay, well, we are out of time. We're in the red. So I want to thank the panelists up here for sharing and preparing those slides for us. And yeah, I think we'll move on to the next session. Thank you.